A sharp crackle filled the living room as I pressed play on the dusty old videotape. My heart pounded against my chest. This could not be happening. I was supposed to be mourning my mother, not discovering that my sister had meticulously planned to steal our family's inheritance. The room felt cold, distant, like it was trying to swallow me whole in the face of a truth I never could have imagined. The screen flickered, and there was my father, his voice a haunting echo from a time long gone. I sat frozen, my fingers gripping the edge of the couch as he spoke of our family's legacy, the very essence of what he and my mother had built together over decades. Tears welled up as I remembered the warmth in his eyes, a stark contrast to the betrayal I now felt. "This is for the girls," my father said, his voice carrying the weight of promises made with love. "Make sure they both get their fair share." The lump in my throat grew heavier. Fair share. How those words resonated with bitter irony now. The tape continued, revealing conversations between my sister and our parents. Talks I had never been privy to, discussions about family trust, plans for the future, conversations that pointed to an indisputable truth: my sister had orchestrated a manipulation that would leave me with nothing. "I can't believe she would do this," I whispered, my breath fogging the air as if the chill came from my very soul. Anger surged through me, mingling with heartbreak. How could someone I trusted, someone I grew up with, do something so heartless? When the tape ended, I felt the silence pressing around me, a heavy blanket of solitude. But I wasn't alone for long. Soon, my living room was filled with family, each member privy to the same revelation. The mood was tense, thick with disbelief and accusations. I faced my sister, her face a mask of indifference, her eyes devoid of remorse. "Is this true?" My voice wavered, betrayal lacing every word. She stood her ground, arms crossed, eyes steely. "It was for the best, you wouldn't have known what to do with it anyway." Her words cut deep, a knife twisting in already open wounds. My mind raced, memories of a shared childhood tainted by this unforeseen treachery. The room erupted into chaos, voices raised, alliances drawn. Accusations flew like arrows, sharp and piercing. Our family, once a united front, now splintered by deceit. "Dad trusted both of us," I shouted, desperation clawing its way out. She shrugged. "Dad was a dreamer, someone had to make the tough decisions." That was when I realized the depth of her betrayal, the lengths she had gone to for control. But as the dust settled, I knew this was far from the end. My parents' legacy mattered, their wishes mattered, and I would fight to see justice done. I left the meeting with a new resolve. My sister may have started this war, but I would see it through. The truth had to prevail, and I would do whatever it took to honor our parents' intentions. In the days that followed, I sought help, assembling a team to investigate further. Every night, I pored over documents, consulted lawyers, and dug through financial records. Each discovery was a piece of a puzzle, revealing how methodically my sister had implemented her plans. The community, once silent, began to talk. Whispers turned into conversations, conversations into support. My sister had underestimated the strength of our family's reputation, how deeply people cared about the truth. The culmination was inevitable, a confrontation that would determine the fate of the inheritance and, more importantly, our family's honor. I stood firm, supported by those who believed in justice, ready to bring the truth into the light. The battle had only just begun, but with each step, I moved closer to reclaiming what was rightfully ours. My sister's betrayal had set this fire ablaze, but I would not let it consume everything we held dear. The next few weeks felt like a blur, but every moment was etched into my memory with sharp clarity. Days melded into nights as I delved deeper into the tangled web my sister had spun. Conversations with lawyers and financial advisors became my new reality, each meeting unraveling more layers of deceit. As pieces of the puzzle fell into place, so did the rage that simmered beneath my calm exterior. Each discovery was like picking at a scab, revealing the raw tissue underneath me. Sister's betrayal wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, it was premeditated, calculated, and executed with cold precision. I remember the night I discovered the offshore accounts. It was late, and I sat hunched over my laptop, the screen casting a blue glow in the otherwise darkened room. My fingers flew over the keys, cross-referencing numbers, names, and transactions. And then there it was, in black and white, a series of accounts tied directly to my sister's personal finances, funds siphoned away from the family inheritance under the guise of management fees and unexpected expenses. It was the proof I needed, but it was also a dagger to the heart. How had my sister justified this to herself? How had she justified it to anyone? I felt a mixture of triumph and sorrow. I was closer to the truth, but the truth was more painful than I'd anticipated. Morning came reluctantly as I sat by the window, watching the dawn paint the sky in hues of pink and orange, a reminder that life went on, oblivious to the turmoil within me. I knew it was time to confront my sister again, this time armed with undeniable evidence. When we met, her demeanor was unchanged, she was as unnerving as ever, a picture of cool composure. We sat across from each other in our parents' living room, the silence heavy with unspoken words. I slid the documents across the table. "Explain this," I said, my voice firm, even as my heart raced. She glanced at the papers, a fleeting shadow crossing her face before she regained her composure. "I told you, I was trying to protect the family's assets. By funneling money into offshore accounts." I retorted, my voice rising with frustration. "This wasn't protection, it was theft. You betrayed our family, our parents' trust." For a moment, the mask slipped. I caught a glimpse of something in her eyes, fear, perhaps, or regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "I did what I had to do. It's not my fault, you're too naive to understand." Her words stung, but they only fueled my determination. "This isn't over, and you know it. We're going to court." The realization hit her then, the gravity of the situation finally dawning. She knew the evidence was damning, knew her actions would not be swept under the rug as she had hoped. But instead of remorse, she doubled down, retreating into her defenses, her back against the proverbial wall. In the following days, I prepared for what was sure to be a tempestuous court battle. Friends and family rallied around me, their support a balm to the wounds her betrayal had inflicted. I was not alone in this fight, the love and encouragement of those who believed in justice bolstered my resolve. The day of the hearing loomed on the horizon like a storm threatening to break. As I sat with my legal team, going over the details one last time, I couldn't help but reflect on the chain of events that had led us here. This was no longer just about the inheritance, it was about righting a wrong, about ensuring that my parents' legacy was honored. My sister had chosen her path, fueled by greed and ambition. Now, I was choosing mine, one of truth and accountability. As the court date approached, I steeled myself for the confrontation that awaited, knowing it would be the hardest fight of my life. Yet, in those quiet moments when doubt crept in, I could almost hear my father's voice, urging me onward, reminding me of the values he and my mother had always cherished. Those whispers from the past sustained me, a reminder that no matter how dark the path, there was always light to guide the way. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the vibrant emotions I felt within. Its walls were cold, indifferent to the drama unfolding inside. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer beside me, my heart pounding like a trebuchet as I watched my sister take her place across the room. When she looked at me, her expression was a mix of defiance and disdain. It was as if she couldn't comprehend why I had pursued this so relentlessly, why I hadn't just let sleeping dogs lie. The proceedings began with the usual formalities, the judge explaining the nature of the case and the responsibilities each party bore. As the opening statements were made, I tried to keep my focus on the facts, on the evidence we had painstakingly gathered. When it was my turn to testify, I took a deep breath, meeting the eyes of those in the room, our room filled with people who had known our family for years. My voice was steady as I recounted the discovery of the videotape, the subsequent investigation, and the betrayal that had led us here. As my sister's lawyer attempted to paint her in a more sympathetic light, I felt a familiar flicker of doubt. Was I doing the right thing, dragging our family's name through the mud? But then I remembered all those sleepless nights, the countless hours spent unraveling her lies, and I knew that this was the only way forward. The cross-examination was intense, and by the end of the day, I was emotionally drained. Yet, I was resolute. This was not just a battle for the inheritance, it was a fight for justice, for the truth that had been buried beneath my sister's deceit. As we left the courthouse, I was surrounded by friends and family, their presence a comforting reminder of the support I had. We hadn't reached the end yet, but I felt a renewed sense of determination, knowing that no matter the outcome, I had stayed true to what was right. I had a feeling that things would get more intense before they got better, but I also knew that I had the strength to see it through to the end. The truth had to prevail, and I would stand firm until it did. The days stretched on, each one pulling me deeper into the mire of legal battles and emotional turmoil. What had once seemed clear-cut an open-and-shut case of betrayal now felt like navigating a labyrinth of complexities. My sister's defense team was relentless, leaving no stone unturned in their quest to discredit my claims and paint my actions as a personal vendetta. Yet, through the storm, I held on to the evidence. The offshore accounts, the unauthorized withdrawals, and an expert testimony that solidified my case provided a strong foundation. Still, the courtroom drama felt like a never-ending barrage, each question from the defense designed to chip away at my resolve. The nights were the hardest, when the doubts crept in with the darkness. I imagined my parents watching over, possibly dismayed by the chasm that had split our family. But then I would remind myself of the promises made, of the fairness they had always emphasized. This wasn't just a fight for the inheritance, it was a fight for their legacy. One evening, as I sat on the porch of my parents' home, exhaustion weighing heavily on my shoulders, my aunt sat beside me. She was one of my mom's closest friends and had always been a voice of reason in our family. Her presence was a balm to my frayed nerves. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly, her words drifting into the cool night air. "Your mother would be proud of you." I looked up at the stars, their twinkle a constant in this sea of chaos. "I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I should have left it alone." She shook her head, placing a comforting hand on mine. "No, dear. Ignoring a wrong only helps it fester. Your parents believed in fairness and truth. Stay your course." Her words were a lighthouse in the fog, guiding me back to my purpose. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her support bolster my resolve. As the trial continued, there were moments of light amid the shadows. Friends who had long been silent came forward, offering their accounts and insights, painting a fuller picture of what had transpired in the years following our parents' passing. One such friend was Marcus, an old family friend who had served as our parents' financial advisor for many years. His testimony was invaluable, shedding light on the discrepancies he had observed but had been unable to speak out against without proof. With his information, our case grew stronger, pulling apart the carefully constructed narrative my sister had tried to weave. In response, my sister grew more desperate. Her attempts to twist the narrative more aggressive, her demeanor shifting from an aloof confidence to visible panic as the trial moved forward. The facade she had maintained for so long was beginning to crumble, brick by precarious brick. Then came the day her own reckoning began. Under cross-examination, the questions pierced through her defenses. Asked to explain the rationale behind the offshore accounts, her answers faltered, her polished veneer slipping away. Every moment felt like an eternity, each question a spotlight on the truth that refused to stay hidden. The courtroom was silent, the tension palpable as my sister struggled to maintain her composure. Her answers were inconsistent, her narrative unraveling before our eyes. "I was just following Dad's wishes," she insisted, her voice betraying a quiver of uncertainty. "He always said we needed to protect our assets." "But those weren't his wishes, were they?" my lawyer pressed. "The videotape clearly stated something else. You acted alone, without your father's, or indeed, your family's consent." Her silence spoke louder than any denial she could have conjured. In that moment, I saw the walls of the fortress she had built around herself begin to collapse, leaving her exposed, vulnerable as the truth washed over her like a relentless tide. Outside the courtroom, I was greeted by a throng of supporters. Their words of encouragement and belief in our case buoyed me, their presence a reminder of the larger battle we were fighting, not just for wealth, but for justice. Even as the trial reached its critical stages, I found moments of quiet reflection. I sought solace in the memories of my parents, their laughter, their kindness. Their love for us had been unconditional, and standing up for their legacy felt like the most honest way to honor their memory. In those moments, I would find myself at their graves, speaking to them as if they could hear me. "I hope in making you proud," I'd whisper, tracing the letters of their names etched into the stone. The wind would rustle through the trees, carrying away my worries as I stood steadfast in my purpose. As the courtroom drama neared its climax, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. The final testimonies were scheduled, the culmination of our weeks-long battle. Every minute detail had to be presented with precision, every inconsistency highlighted, every truth unsparingly brought into the light. The day arrived with unexpected clarity, the air crisp, the sun an unseasonable visitor in the autumn sky. I felt a calm resolve settle over me as I entered the courthouse, my path clear as the friends and family accompanying me offered their unwavering support. The courtroom was packed, a sea of familiar faces and curious onlookers. My lawyer gave me a reassuring nod, a silent promise that we were ready for whatever came next. As the proceedings commenced, I watched my sister take the stand one final time. Her expression was unreadable, though a flicker of something, perhaps fear, flashed in her eyes as she glanced my way. The room was silent, the anticipation palpable as the judge entered, her gavel tapping lightly as she settled into her seat. The final arguments were presented, each side laying out their evidence, their testimonies. My lawyer was meticulous, drawing from the well of truths we had painstakingly uncovered, weaving them into a tapestry of undeniable reality. As the closing statements were made, I felt a tide of emotion rise within me. Gratitude for those who had stood by me, determination to see this through, and a bittersweet sadness for what had been lost, family bonds that may never be mended, an innocence that could never be reclaimed. But this was about more than just our family. It was about all the families who faced betrayal, who battled for justice when it seemed like an impossible dream. It was about standing firm in the face of adversity, holding on to the truth when lies seemed insurmountable. As the day drew to a close, the judge announced that her decision would come soon, and we were dismissed. The waiting began, the uncertainty stretching like a taut wire over the days that followed. We had fought a difficult battle, one that had tested every fiber of my being. I knew the end was near, but it felt like the calm before the storm, a pause in the turmoil, a moment to gather strength for whatever lay ahead. The waiting felt interminable, each day bleeding into the next with an anxious anticipation that gnawed at my insides. I kept busy, trying to distract myself with mundane tasks that required little thought but brought no real peace. Yet, in every quiet moment, the anticipation of the judge's decision loomed ever larger, a shadow I couldn't escape. Friends and family continued to rally around me, their presence a steady lighthouse in the tumultuous sea of my emotions. We gathered often, sharing stories, laughter, and memories of better times, those moments serving as a reminder of what truly mattered beyond the courtroom walls. Then, one crisp morning as the autumn leaves began to paint the town in fiery hues, my phone rang. The courthouse was ready with the verdict, the judge's decision had been made. My heart clenched, a mix of fear and resolve washing over me. This was it. The moment that would bring closure or further turmoil. As I stepped into the courthouse, the air felt thick, charged with the weight of what was to come. I was accompanied by a few close family members and friends who had been my pillars of strength throughout this ordeal. We filed into the courtroom, taking our seats with a quiet dignity that belied the tension brewing beneath the surface. The room was eerily silent as the judge entered, her expression inscrutable. I held my breath, focused entirely on her as she took her place and began the proceedings. Each word she spoke seemed to hang in the air, suspended like a delicate thread. The judge summarized the case, detailing the evidence presented and the testimonies heard. My pulse quickened as she began to speak of the principles of fairness and justice that had been at the heart of this trial. It was then that I allowed myself a glimmer of hope, a whisper of confidence that the truth we had fought so hard to unveil would prevail. When she finally announced her decision, the words seemed to echo endlessly, "The court found in my favor." My sister was ordered to return the misappropriated funds and to pay additional restitution. The relief was overwhelming, a floodgate opening within me as tears pooled in my eyes. Justice had been served, the truth vindicated. The courtroom seemed to collectively exhale as those around me erupted into hushed congratulations and supportive embraces. My lawyer shook my hand, his expression one of satisfaction and relief. "You did it," he said simply, and I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion lodged in my throat. Across the room, I caught my sister's eye. Her face was pale, her expression a mixture of disbelief and bitterness. For a moment, I felt a pang of sorrow for her. My victory was bittersweet, sullied by the knowledge of what it had cost our family. But it was necessary, I reminded myself, a painful step toward honoring our parents' legacy. As we left the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter somehow. The burden I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted, and with it came a profound sense of closure. I knew that mending the rift within our family would take time, but I felt hopeful, ready to embark on that journey. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing, on rebuilding what had been lost. The community reached out, their support and understanding a balm to the wounds left by the trial. My sister and I remained distant strangers navigating this new reality. One afternoon, a letter arrived from her. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what it might contain. Inside, her words were surprisingly raw, an admission of guilt wrapped in a thin veneer of defensiveness. She wrote of pressures I hadn't known she'd felt, of jealousy and regret. "I'm sorry," she wrote, and I knew those words didn't erase the pain, but they were a tentative first step toward the possibility of forgiveness. I took my time to respond, carefully considering my own words. I chose honesty, acknowledging the hurt but also expressing hope for reconciliation. It was a beginning, fragile but genuine, like the first green shoots after a long, hard winter. As the months passed, life began to settle into a new normal. I spent time with family, cherishing the connections that remained strong and nurturing those that needed healing. My parents' home became a hub of laughter and warmth once more, their spirit living on in the love we shared. The experience had changed me, forged resilience from adversity. I learned to let go of what I couldn't control and to embrace the present with all its imperfections. The past remained a part of me, a story I would never forget, but it no longer weighed me down. Instead, it had taught me the value of truth, the necessity of justice, and the power of forgiveness. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, I visited my parents' graves again. I stood there, the cool breeze tugging at my hair, and closed my eyes in silent reflection. I felt their presence in the whispering leaves, the gentle rustle of the wind. "I hope I've made you proud," I murmured, a smile touching my lips as peace settled over me. In that moment, I realized the journey hadn't been just about the inheritance or the courtroom battles. It was about finding my voice, standing up for what was right, and eventually finding the strength to forgive. It was about honoring the legacy of love and integrity my parents had instilled in me, and carrying that forward into the future. With renewed hope, I walked back to the house, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The path had been fraught with challenges, but through it all, I had discovered something precious: a deeper understanding of family, a stronger sense of self, and a testament to the indomitable power of truth and love.